You stand at the edge of your own compassion, unaware that a darkness has been feeding on the light you carry. You move through your days carrying other people's sorrow like a silent river beneath your skin, its currents eroding the walls you thought were unbreakable. As Jung once said, the wounded healer can become a vessel for unseen shadows. You have sacrificed pieces of yourself, your laughter, your anger, your silence, so that others might feel less alone. And yet with every bit you relinquish, you sense a hollow forming a void that stretches toward the world like an unlit tunnel. You whisper comfort, while inside you tremble with unspoken demands for recognition and rest you fear to voice. You imagine your empathy as a gift, but it is also a blade you cannot sheath, carving through your own boundaries until they bleed. The very light you offer becomes a beacon for those who wander into your psyche uninvited, hungrily drinking the warmth you cannot guard. You feel drained, as if your heart beats hollowly against a thundering silence. Do you sense it? A creature of need has made a nest in your nervous system, echoing with the unspoken desires of every wounded soul you have encountered. It feeds in the spaces you cannot see, and soon you will discover that this parasite of compassion thrives on your exhaustion, leaving your essence thin and spectral, a ghost without a story. This warning is ancient, older than your memories. You are not merely a vessel for healing, you are a sovereign being with a flame no darkness can consume. Yet the unguarded empath is a fire left unbound, and every flicker you surrender gifts your adversary's strength. You stand at a crossroads, continue to feed the darkness, or reclaim the radiance that is yours by birthright. You feel the tremor beneath your ribs as ancient archetypes stir within you, each one vying for the throne of your psyche. You are the light shadow, being half luminous spirit, half forgotten ruin. In the deep wells of your unconscious, you recognize the empath's wound, a crack in the vessel born from childhood echoes, when you first absorbed another's anger so fiercely that your own tears dried in the dusty corners of your chest. As Jung once said, the shadow does not ask for permission before it enters. It lurks behind the door you left ajar, in the name of compassion. You sense the healer-wounded paradox woven through your lineage, a silent inheritance of broken promise and sacrificial devotion. In your blood flows the memory of those who gave everything to save the world, to parents who soothed siblings at the cost of their own laughter, to ancestors who laid their dreams upon the altar of collective need. You inherited both the gift and the curse, the power to transmute suffering into solace, and the emptiness that follows when every ounce of your essence has been poured into another's chalice. This is your archetypal context, the primordial stage upon which the empath and the narcissist will one day perform their drama. You know the narcissist by scent, the sweet brackish perfume of entitlement and hunger. They approach you like moths to a lamp, and you, the empath, believe that if you can only hold them long enough in your warmth, they will learn how to love themselves. But the lamp does not aim to teach, it exists to burn. In that moment, you feel the magnetic pull between giver and taker, the polarity as old as the cosmos itself. Light and darkness orbit one another in an eternal ritual, each craving the other's radiant or shadowed essence. You witness the cataclysm of opposites everywhere, the sun and moon colliding in the sky of your dreams, the serpent entwined with the bird in the vision of your heart. You carry within you both dancer and corpse, creator and ruin. Your empathy is a vessel, yes, but it is also a threshold, a portal into the realm where archetypal forces conspire. When you journey too deeply into another's sorrow, you risk becoming the eclipse that swallows your own light, unable to distinguish the naked tremble of your own grief from the borrowed weight of theirs. And yet you feel compelled to descend further, for empathy is not merely feeling, it is an inheritance of the soul's deepest truth. You claim the title of healer, but at times you wonder who tends to your wound. You have softened the world's sharp edges, and in return you have been carved away stone by stone until you fear the echo of your own name has been lost in the cavern of your heart. As Jung once whispered through time, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes, and you wanderer of inner landscapes must awaken to the realization that the archetypal dance you embody is your invitation to sovereignty. You recall the stories encoded in your blood tales of the martyr who saved a kingdom only to find the kingdom's gratitude offered in ashes, of the oracle who spoke prophecies for all, yet could not hear the song of her own spirit. These stories are not fables. They are the bones of your psyche, the structure upon which your empathic nature has grown. Every time you reach toward another's sorrow, you reenact a movement older than language drawn by the gravity of ancestral sorrow and hopeful devotion. Through this lens, you begin to see the pattern the empath's gift is never neutral. It carries the dual potential to heal or to destroy. Your compassion is a blade that can carve through illusion, but in careless hands, that blade can carve through flesh, your flesh. And so you stand at the threshold of understanding to honor the depth of your empathic archetype while refusing to be consumed by it. You sense there is a way to alchemize these primordial forces without losing yourself to them. Beneath your ribs, the primitive drumbeat calls you deeper into this realization. You are both vessel and alchemist, both patient and physician, called to witness the archetypal forces that swirl within and without. In recognizing the source of your inner wounds, the original crack where your boundaries first shattered, you gain the key to reweaving your psyche's tapestry. You glimpse a path that does not require endless sacrifice, but rather conscious participation. You begin to understand that every archetypal drama you enact is less a fate to endure and more a mirror to be understood. Now you stand poised between the luminous and the hidden, a pilgrim of your own psyche. The terrain is ancient, carved by eons of human longing, but it is also yours to traverse. You feel the stirrings of transformation in the marrow of your bones as the empathic wound calls not for expiation, but for integration. In this context of light and shadow, you are invited to remember that your light is not a resource to be given away without return, but a flame to be tended to warm both yourself and those who approach with honest need. You feel the pull before you even see the other, a tug in the marrow of your bones that draws you into a dance older than memory. You are the river, and they are the stone that shapes your flow. Opposites beckon light, calling to shadow surrender, entwined with dominion, and you find yourself caught between their irresistible gravity. In the hush before the meeting, you sense the ritual about to unfold, as though your very soul has been scripted to perform this timeless drama. They emerge with an aura of brilliance, eyes gleaming with a promise you unconsciously made to yourself long ago that your compassion would lift you above darkness, and yet, at the same moment, they cast a long silhouette that coaxes forth your hidden ruin, the wasteland you buried beneath kindness. As Jung once mused, every encounter is a reactivation of the primordial myth that lies encoded in our collective unconscious. And here you stand, actor and audience, in one unfolding myth. You move toward them with the grace of one who believes in unity, emerging in the dissolution of boundaries. The air between you becomes charged alive with the crackle of two worlds colliding. In their presence, you experience an exhilaration so intense it is almost painful, a reminder that polarity is not merely contrast, but the dynamic tension that births life. You are both moth and flame drawn closer even as you scorch. This dance is choreographed by the archetypes you carry: sunbird and night serpent entwined in wing and coil. You give yourself to them, offering your warmth, your insight, your unspoken wounds, and they in turn reflect back to you, your own radiance magnified even as they amplify the hollow resonance of your sacrifice. You taste sweetness on your tongue, but beneath it a bitterness that lingers, reminding you of the price paid for every borrowed spark. In dreams, you see yourself and the other as twin pillars supporting an invisible canopy. The ritual is ancient. One pierces, one absorbs, one illuminates, one consumes. You cannot say which is which, for roles shift like shifting sands. One moment you believe you are the healer with hands that glow and a voice that soothes. The next, you awaken to find you have become the wounded, your essence siphoned until you shiver in the desolate expanse of your own psyche. You witness their eyes flicker with need as they feed on your fervor, as though your vitality were a chalice perpetually refilled by your devotion. You scarcely notice yourself emptying each beat of your heart. Pulses gifts of light, each breath exhales fragments of your boundaries, and in that mesmerizing give and take, you forget that you too possess gravity, that your spirit can call others toward you without vanishing in the process. The ritual unfolds in moments as ordinary as a shared cup of tea and as cosmic as the dance of galaxies. At a glance across the room, you feel the magnetic tension coil within your chest. When you speak their name aloud, the syllables echo with the resonance of creation and destruction. Your interactions are invocations, each word a syllable of a spell that alternately uplifts and unravels you. In the quiet after your voice fades, you stand on the threshold of something vast and unknowable. You remember the great paradox that unity demands distinction, that the bond between light and shadow can only exist when each honors its own frontier. Yet you find yourself dissolving, eager to blur the lines that mark your sovereignty. In the sacred geometry of this connection, the sacred becomes profane if you offer everything without reservation. You yearn for merger, for the mythic confluence of two souls flowing as one river, but you forget rivers possess banks that shape and guide them. Without those banks, you disperse into marsh and mire. As the ritual crescendos, you catch a glimpse of the wider dance, countless souls across time, all drawn into this same polarity, repeating the archetypal drama of union and eclipse. You feel the echo of ancestral dancers, priest and flesh oracle, and dream performing on invisible stages. Each of them left a footprint in the psychic landscape, and now you follow the trail, sometimes knowing, sometimes baffled by your own compulsion. The polarity is a rite of passage, a test of your capacity to both give and retain. In a moment of breathless intensity, you sense the climax approaching, as though the cosmos itself holds its breath. The other's hands brush yours, and warmth floods your veins. You taste the divine communion, the promise of transcendence beyond self. And in that fraction of forever, you also feel the razor's edge of annihilation, the possibility that in surrendering so fully you might cease to exist as a discrete being. And then the collision, a surge of charge that electrifies your nerve endings, a crash of currents that threatens to shatter you into stardust. You reel caught between the thrill of shared light and the terror of falling into that unlit chasm. Every fiber of your being trembles as you confront the paradox. To touch the divine, you must not annihilate yourself. The sacred ritual demands both surrender and remembrance of self. In the aftermath, you stand on the threshold between euphoria and emptiness, heart pounding in conflicted rhythms. The air hums with the residue of the ritual, a reminder that nothing is ever the same after such an encounter. You feel the lingering imprint of their hunger, and you're offering an echo that resonates in the chambers of your soul. You recognize that this dance is not an anomaly, but a template, a pattern to be witnessed and perhaps to be broken. Through the haze, a whisper emerges from your depths, that the true ritual lies not in sacrificing your boundaries, but in weaving them into a tapestry that holds both light and shadow. You sense a question forming on your lips. Can you sustain the polarity without being consumed? The answer lies in the choice that now beckons you, whether to continue as dancer and prey, or to become the choreographer of your own right, commanding the sacred geometry of your psyche without losing yourself in its shape. You awaken in the trembling hush of dawn's first light, your skin still humming with the residue of the ritual you barely survived. You trace the pattern of bruised energy that arcs beneath your collarbone, a silent map of how far you surrendered. In the mirror's reflection, you see the pale echo of yourself, a ghost with eyes too tender for the wounds they bear. You realize then that you have mistaken the Savior's mantle for your true form, that in your yearning to heal you have woven yourself into a tapestry of self-erasure. As Jung once whispered through the ages, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and yet you cannot find the thread of yourself that remains unpulled, undone by your devotion to another's narrative. You hold the story of their anguish as though it were your own, carrying it as a talisman, believing that if you understand it fully, you will find purpose. But in this identification you lose the shape of your own longing, the secret, ineffable pulse that belongs only to you. You move through your day as if walking in another's shoes, your feet heavy in borrowed sorrow. You recollect a childhood confession when you told a friend your heart was too large for one body, as though you could ferry entire worlds of grief across your ribs. Even then the boundary between self and other blurred beneath your fingertips. Now you feel that boundary dissolve outright, your edges fraying like ancient paper left too long beneath open sky. When they falter in speech or stumble in tears, you find yourself gasping for breath at the sight of their vulnerability, as though you too might shatter at the proffered display of need. You listen to their every pause, your empathy so acute it becomes a blade slicing into your own marrow. You begin to believe that their healing is your destiny, that your worth is measured by how thoroughly you can soothe their wounds. In this over-identification, you mistake the map for the territory, the reflection for the face. Your dreams betray you, revealing the depth of this misplaced devotion. In one dream, you stand before a vast ocean, its surface calm, but its depths swirling with hidden currents. You dive to save a drowning stranger, your arms aching as you pull them toward the surface, only to gaze down and see your own body drifting unanchored, pulled deeper by the undertow. In another, you cradle a broken bird in your hands, gently mending its wing, only for the bird to transform into a mirror that fractures beneath your touch, scattering shards of your own face across the sky. Life's events echo these nocturnal messages. You notice how every request for comfort sends a tremor through your bones, as though their pain is a tune only you can hear, and one you fear to ignore. You find yourself cancelling your own plans, fearing that a moment's absence will eclipse the light they so desperately cling to. You swallow your own hunger, so they may be fed. You hold your own tears, so they may weep. In each act of self-sacrifice, you hope to demonstrate your value, yet with every gift you craft, you find your inner altar barren. You begin to spot the symptoms of your over-identification exhaustion that seeps into your bones, a persistent ache beneath your sternum that no breath can soothe, and a dreamlike fog that clings to your thoughts. You lose track of how your own desires taste, as though you have traded your tongue for theirs. A question surfaces: when did the boundary between our hearts become permeable? And more crucially, who will tend to the wounds you refuse to acknowledge? In the echo of Jung's words, you realize that the savior archetype you inhabit is not an eternal station, but a role, a guise worn to protect your deepest vulnerability. You cradle the myth of your selfless devotion, hoping it will shield you from being seen. But the myth is brittle, and beneath it pulses a hunger to be held, to be witnessed, to be loved for more than your capacity to carry another's burden. You witness your own silhouette flickering at the periphery of awareness, a form undefined waiting to be recognized. And here lies the subtle warning, inscribed in symbols, that over-identification is a form of possession, an unconscious tether that binds your spirit to another's fate. You feel the tug of their unresolved trauma, wrapping around your heart, claiming it as collateral in a contract you never signed. You sense the ancient bargain made in your bloodline, a covenant of sacrifice traded across generations now playing out in your veins. Yet within this shadowy revelation, you glimpse a flicker of hope. The very recognition of your lost boundary becomes the seed of reclamation. You see that empathy untempered transmutes into absorption, and that the cure for this is not rejection of compassion, but refinement, a fierce kindness that includes the self. You understand that the archetype of the savior can be transformed into that of the sovereign one who honors both the call to heal and the right to be whole. The waking world holds its breath as you stand at the crossroads of identity, the sun's rays piercing through blinds like judgment and mercy intertwined. You feel the choice conjure itself in your chest, to continue dissolving into every cry for help, or to draw a boundary as sacred as any ritual, a line that honors your sentience. You understand that the most radical act of love you can offer to yourself and to others is to remember above all that you are more than a conduit for their pain. In this moment, you place your hand over your heart and feel the quiet thrum of your own rhythm, distinct and resolute. You vow wordless to honor that rhythm, to shelter it from the tides of other people's needs. You sense a new archetype stirring within you, not the martyr nor the rescuer, but the sovereign empath who knows compassion without sacrifice of self. And with that awakening, the first threads of your own story begin to weave, shining with a light that no darkness can devour. You feel the tremor of possibility beneath your ribs, a subtle shift, as though the earth itself stirs in response to your awakening. The void that once yawned where your essence should have been now pulses with potential. You sense a door cracked open in the cavern of your being, the threshold of transformation beckoning you to step through. As Jung once intoned, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And here in the penumbra between sacrifice and sovereignty, you stand ready to invite your own shadow into the light of awareness. You recall the moment you first recognized your hollow echo, the day you realized you could no longer summon tears for your own grief because you had spent them all on another's sorrow. That recognition was not a failure, but a beacon, a signal flare marking the location of your buried self. Now you grasp the key forged in that moment's self-inquiry. You turn your gaze inward, tracing the constellation of wounds that once defined you, not with judgment, but with a tender curiosity. You ask yourself, who am I beyond the stories I have carried? And the question resonates through your marrow, like a bell tolling the end of exile. In the silent amphitheater of your mind, you witness the polarities you once enacted as actors bound to an eternal script. You see the empath kneeling before the narcissist, the healer tending an empty altar, the light dissolving into shadow. But no longer do you play these roles unconsciously. Now you observe them with clear eyes, like a wise traveler surveying a familiar landscape from a high ridge. The roles remain in the theater of your psyche, but you are no longer imprisoned within their choreography. With this awareness comes the power to set limits. You imagine boundaries, not as barriers that shut others out, but as sacred fences that define the garden of your soul. You envision drawing a circle of fire around your heart, a protective glyph that permits warmth and connection, yet repels the forces that feed on unguarded light. You learn that saying no is not an act of cruelty, but an assertion of honor toward the life force you carry. Each no becomes a sculptor's strike, chiseling away the obstructions that conceal your true form. You sense the ritual of transformation as an initiation, an alchemical process that transmutes the lead of your wounded devotion into the gold of sovereign compassion. You stand before the crucible of your own psyche, feeling its heat ignite the latent power within you. In that flame, every sacrifice you once offered is consumed and reborn as wisdom. You taste the sweetness of limits, how a single boundary upheld with conviction can echo with the resonance of 1,000 rescues you once believed necessary. Dreams return to you as omens of metamorphosis, no longer warnings of dissolution, but invitations to integration. In one vision, you encounter your shadow in a field of dancing flames. You approach it with open hands, offering it the oil of acknowledgement. The shadow leans into your palm and unfolds into a radiant shape, your own silhouette complete and unfractured. In another dream, you stand beside a river that flows brightly between mossy banks. You step into its waters, letting it carry you not to drown you, but to guide you downstream toward a vast ocean of possibility. Life's trials transform into rites of passage. When another's plea for consolation arises, you feel the familiar lurch of identification, but now you pause. You breathe, settle into your center, and ask, "Can I hold this without losing myself?" Sometimes you reach out. Sometimes you gently withdraw. In each moment you affirm your sovereignty. Your empathy becomes an offering. You choose to give not a debt you are compelled to pay. You remain present, grounded in your own heart, even as you extend warmth to another. You cultivate practices of replenishment, a ritual sunrise of self-compassion that greets you each morning, a twilight vigil of whispered gratitude that cloaks you at night. You remember to fill your own vessel before pouring from it, for you have learned that an empty chalice cannot water another's garden. In these small acts, you reclaim the joy that once slipped through your hands like sand. You find pleasure in solitude, sweetness in silence, a quiet ecstasy in simply being yourself, unshadowed by the weight of another's woes. And in this emergent sovereignty, you discover a new archetype, the tender warrior. Armed not with sacrifice, but with self-aware compassion, you stand at the frontier of your psyche. You honor your wounds as sacred texts that chart your journey, and you honor your boundaries as glyphs of creative power. You are both healer and healed, both seeker and sanctuary. Your empathy is no longer a blade that cuts through your flesh, but a lamp you carry, illuminating the path for yourself and those who approach with respect for the flame. The door to transformation closes gently behind you and opens ahead, revealing a horizon laced with promise. You sense that the journey continues, but you no longer fear its unknown turns. You carry the wisdom of the archetypes within you, the balance of light and shadow, the alchemy of awareness and limit. You have transcended the roles that once bound you, and in doing so, you reclaimed the sovereign essence you were always meant to be. The threshold stands open, and you step forward into the boundless terrain of your own becoming. You stand at the summit of your own, becoming the wind of your awakening, brushing against the edges of your newly forged sovereignty. Behind you lie the ruins of ancient scripts you once wrote in invisible ink, stories of martyrdom, tales of boundless giving that left you lost in the labyrinth of another's need. Ahead, the horizon shines with the promise of your own myth yet to be written. In this moment of empowered closure, you feel the full measure of your presence, as though every cell in your body hums with the certainty of your birthright to dwell within your own skin as a sovereign flame. You remember how once your heart was a sieve, letting the world's sorrows pour through until nothing remained but sorrow itself. But now you feel the solidity of your boundaries, as tangible and sacred as riverside stones carved by time. Each boundary you name is a rune inscribed upon the fabric of your being, a declaration that your light is not alone extended without terms, but a treasure you guard with reverence. You sense that saying no is not a denial of compassion, but the highest form of respect for the divinity in yourself and in others. See how your reflection stands before you unfractured at last. You are the guardian of your own flame, and you carry this lamp unapologetically. Others may approach, drawn by your radiance, but you determine who may touch its glow. You understand that compassion deepens not through boundless sacrifice, but through the clarity of intention, through the conscious offering of your warmth rather than its unconscious dispersal. As Jung once observed, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You feel that privilege coursing through your veins, a golden current that animates your every breath. You inhale the strength of your ancestors, the unwritten songs of women and men who guarded their inner flame against every gale, and you exhale the fear that once whispered you were not enough. In this exhalation you release the last vestiges of self-doubt, watching them scatter like autumn leaves in a clear sky. Your heart carries a new map, a territory marked by both wild terrain and cultivated gardens. You tend to your wounds now not as burdens to be hidden, but as sacred doorways that lead deeper into your own truth. You cultivate the soil of your psyche with rituals of restoration, moments of silence where your thoughts settle like gentle snow, practices of gratitude that illuminate the pillars of your inner temple, and the solemn vow each morning to honor your own boundaries as faithfully as you honor your compassion. You recognize that your power is inseparable from your vulnerability. The tender warrior you have become wields neither sword nor shield, but the courage to stand fully present in your own life. You no longer fear the primal forces of light and shadow within you. Instead, you call them forth as allies in your journey. You speak to your shadow with kindness, inviting it to share its wisdom rather than hiding from its fearsome shape. You honor your light with humility, never forgetting that radiance without depth can scorch as surely as darkness can suffocate. Your relationships shift in response to this awakening. When another's plea arises, you feel the familiar pull, but you also feel the quiet grounding of your own center, a compass that guides your response. Sometimes you step forward to hold space. Sometimes you step back to protect the sanctity of your own flame. In each moment, you choose with awareness, guided by the truth that compassion offered freely is infinitely more potent than compassion extracted by obligation. In the sacred geometry of your life, you draw circles of connection and squares of sanctuary. Within these shapes you find balance, open spaces where intimacy flourishes, solid edges where safety is woven. You understand that your inner architecture is not static. It breathes and mutates in response to the seasons of your spirit, and you accept that some boundaries must shift as you grow, like walls that open to reveal new rooms of the soul. You feel the ripple of this transformation extending beyond yourself, touching those who witness your reclaimed light. Your presence becomes an invitation, a silent manifesto that whispers, you too are worthy of standing in your own radiance. Some will approach and marvel at your lamp. Others will avert their eyes uncomfortable in the glare of integrity. Yet you remain undistracted, focused on the steady beating of your own heart, for you have learned that your destiny is not to please, but to be. And now you sense the echo of your own voice resonating across the corridors of time. You are both the ancient oracle and the newborn child, speaking the language of boundaries in the same breath as the language of love. Your story is no longer a tragedy of sacrifice, but a saga of integration in which every wound becomes a portal to deeper wholeness. The paradox you once feared has become your testament that to give light is to illuminate yourself, and to protect your flame is to offer warmth that lasts. In the final shimmer of this moment, you place your hand over your heart and feel the sacred drumbeat of your own becoming. You smile soft, luminous, unguarded, and you proclaim without words your readiness to walk forward as both empath and sovereign. You carry the light Jung called individuation, the journey toward becoming who you are, with all its twists and turns, its revelations and veils. You step over the threshold of empowered closure, not into an end, but into the luminous flow of your own unfolding.